Hey everyone. So I know on this podcast, we often talk a lot about the marriage between strategy and style and how it's our approach to tackling branding and sort of the never ending process and job that it is and everything that's involved with building a brand. And this is very timely because this happened yesterday. I mentioned booking a new client. It was interesting because one of her questions to me, I think she was vetting some designers to work with. And luckily, we are going to partner together. And hopefully, this helped me win the bid here, so to say. But she said, so what if we just pour all this time into creating something that we don't really love at the end of it? You ever run into that? What happens? You put the hours in. We like you and what you're doing, but we don't love the logo or love whatever assets we're creating. How do we navigate that? And I thought it was an interesting question because it's not that I haven't thought of it, but I don't know that I've had a client directly ask me that.
That is interesting.
Yeah. And she was very sincere about it. And I was like, no, it's a very valid, good question. I think because some designers do limit rounds of revisions and have certain boundaries in place when working together. And that's fine. I'm not saying to not do that or that's not important. But to be honest, I don't really limit 2 to 3 rounds of revisions. That's just not how the process works. It needs to be more organic. I'm not saying you can't have structure around it. But when something flows and it's getting fleshed out, it's being built, you can't always just limit it to 2 rounds of revisions. And then after that, I'm going to start charging more. I guess for me, I just work a little bit more abstract. We're going to get it right. I'm not saying we're going to end up spending 2 years on this or go totally have scope creep, and blow this package through the roof and have it not be a good use of time for myself or the client. We're going to create something you end up loving. It might take 1 round of revisions. It might take 3, but we'll get there, right? Like I'm not going to sleep well knowing a client's not happy with something. And I'm just like, well, we're at the end of the package here. So here's your stuff and go on your way, wish you the best. I want this to be a good experience. I want this to be a process that works in a way where you go from concept to completion, but you see this journey and you see it through, and it's part of the partnership and the relationship I build with the client. And I also told her this. We do the right homework up front. We do lay the foundation. We do build some strategy. We do figure out some messaging, right? We're not just creating a logo and putting together a color palette and hoping that you like it. We do some homework up front before we even start building out any of the tangible visuals. I'm flexible in terms of don't feel like you're limited or this is a rushed process, or if we don't have it right after round 2, well, I don't know what we're going to do. For me, it doesn't work that way. We're going to keep working at it until you are 100% happy and satisfied. So rest assured on that, number 1. But number 2, how do we make the process flow smoothly and much more easily to where we probably won't have that problem of having to really whittle away and get this right and it's going to take forever? We kind of avoid some of that stress and anxiety and extra rounds of revisions by having a proper foundation in place and figuring out strategy. So having walked her through, sent her a questionnaire, like, here are questions to think about. Because we talk the talk, but we also walk it as professionals who work in this space, as brand designers, as strategists, literally asking her the question of mission and vision and values and your ideal client demographic and what do you want to be known for and where do you do it? Who do you do it for? All of the things. Mm-hmm. I said, we will reach that clarity once we have it. It will make the process go so much easier, right? It doesn't go out of control and we're just going round and round in circles. Not saying there aren't hiccups or issues from time to time. At the end of the day, it all works out and hopefully we deliver a product to our client and they're happy with it. But I think if we have the right foundation in place first, we're probably not going to run into those issues of going round and round and round, if that makes sense.
Yeah. And I would just like to piggyback on what you were saying, Jessie. I'm thinking back to some previous client experiences where we were creating new brands, and I've got a process as well that I walk my clients through, and I'm like, okay, this is our expected timeline. These are the different phases. This is about how long each phase will take. And, we have X amount of rounds, X number of revision, but it's a lot more than maybe what the average designer normally offers because, like you, I want them to have enough time to think about things, make some decisions, to really feel good about it. But at the same time, this can't go on forever. And I have had projects do that, where we've had to put some parameters around it. But I will say, for our friends who are listening, who are small business owners or a brand manager of an organization, my recollection of where some of these projects tend to get a little bit tense is when the client forgets the importance of the strategy behind the design decisions that we're making. I know this just because, Jessie, you and I have worked on a few projects together, so our processes are very similar. And I'm thinking back on a couple of instances where it felt like the project may have started to break down just a little bit. And if I was going back in hindsight, like, why did that happen? I do think it's because there was the perspective shifted from strategy to just, this would look pretty without rhyme or reason. And I pushed back and said, well, do you remember our previous conversations when we talked about your mission, vision, values, when we talked about these things, the color palette, the feeling that you wanted to convey to your customers, the experience you wanted them to have, and all of these strategic just facets, I guess, these elements that you wanted to make sure were part of your brand and the experience people had. That's how we got here. And, now that you're saying, I kind of don't like the color, but my favorite color is blue. So why don't we just do blue or whatever it is? And well, okay, yeah. I understand that you like the color, but does that work with the brand strategy? Does that make sense for what you said you wanted, you decided? This is what you want the experience to be. And sometimes they go, well, actually, now that I think about it, I think I want to change things, which is totally fine. And then another case, like, oh my gosh, you're so right. I totally forgot. Blue is not the answer here. Let's go with one of these options that we had already picked. And people who are building brands that they love, that from a brand strategist, brand designer standpoint, we want you to get what you love. Also, there's sometimes will be points that come where you forget about the strategy because we're looking at colors, we're looking at all the visual stuff. And that is why we have a podcast where we talk about how strategy comes before style, because we've been through this a few times where we have had to step in and remind our clients, hey, listen, I get what you're saying. I get what you say you like. But is that supported, I guess, by your brand strategy that you've said you wanted? And they're like, you're right. We are happy to help you get from point A to Z, but we may have to remind you of some of these key decisions that you made. Come back to the strategy, because as long as it remains a good strategy for you, that helps support everything else and all the other decisions you're going to make, whether it's the brand visuals, whether it's marketing, whether it's something else in the business.
Strategy is not always the fun stuff sometimes, and it's hard to see and it's hard to kind of understand and wrap your head around, but it really is what guides everything else, the design, and so much. Without it, what's the point? Why are you doing anything if there is no reason behind it? And the strategy is just, it's the reason, like broken down into a lot of different pieces, ultimately, of what is driving this brand at the end of the day.
It reminds me of that saying, I think it goes, if you don't know where you're going, how do you know when you're there? And I think about that a lot with branding. If we don't have a plan, if we don't have the strategy, if we don't have this map that tells us where we're going, how do you know when you've arrived? And honestly, in a business, you're never going to arrive. Like, the target is always moving. We just know that having guidelines, having a map, having frames of reference and parameters and all of these things, it will help keep you in a good direction for your organization. If you didn't have that, where would you be?